You know, but we could talk about Mr. Kelly, Mr. Robert Kelly. You know,
sounds good to me. Happy to give you the skinny.
Yes, please give me the skinny, because last week it was reported that that he got a little taste of jailhouse justice from a frustrated inmate who, I guess, allegedly attacked him. We've been hearing reports that inmates getting angry when pro-Kelly protesters come to the jail, and I guess the jail gets put on lockdown. So I thought we would call one of his attorneys, you, Nicole, and find out what is the skinny on Mr. Robert Kelly.
Listen, Bushman, I'm so glad that you reached out to me, because let me tell you something. What is being said in the media thus far regarding what happened last Wednesday over at the MCC in Chicago is simply just not correct. And I say that because I had an opportunity to speak with Robert. In fact, we are able to talk FaceTime. And I spoke with him Friday when he was finally let out of the SHU. And the allegations, or what MCC put out there, was that he was punched a bunch of times and he's fine, no injuries and so forth, right? Is that basically what you remember?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me tell you, the story is not quite so easy. I wish it was. And I understand that there are people that in prison, you know what, you look the wrong way, you might get beat up. But what this was an individual, a white male, who had previously been on a phone call right outside of Robert's cell and was MFing Robert, MFing, calling him a Nigger, saying he wants to get him, and so forth. As a result of that, Robert was quick to tell the authorities that he's very concerned for his safety because of what he heard this guy saying. Needless to say, that was about 3 weeks prior to this incident. Robert, in this particular incident, was sleeping. It was after 10 o'clock, closer to 10:30. He had just gotten off the phone. At 10 o'clock, he had a call. He goes to his room, decides to take a nap. When he sleeps, he puts the covers over his head. It was during the 2 hours that he and his cell block actually able to be outside and enjoying whatever they can try to enjoy there. And so he decides to go back to his cell. There's another individual, the individual I just told you about, who's got a tattoo on his head that says, like, F the feds. He's 6'7". He had gone to psych, which is, like they're a therapist. And instead of being brought back to his cell after that, he walked directly to Robert's cell. He came into Robert's cell. Robert can only explain it as initially he's sleeping and the blanket's over his head. All of a sudden he just feels pounding on his head. He's kind of tangled up in the cover trying to get to it and see what's going on. By the time he's able to get out of the covers, he's on the bottom bunk looking up, and this guy, same guy we just talked about, is stomping on his head with his shoe. Stomping. And Robert is freaking out. Robert at that point sees, and while he's stomping, by the way, racial slurs left and right. He's pissed and upset about some protesters that Robert had nothing to do with, because trust me, if Robert's the one who tried to get the protesters there, the whole prison would know, because his phone calls are taped. So he's upset about the MCC putting everyone on lockdown because of people's right to protest. Then everyone in lockdown blames Robert because the MCC tells them all it's because of Robert's protesters. So he's screaming about that, and as he's pummeling his face with his foot, Robert sees him go for a pen that's behind his ear, similar to like how you'd put a cigarette behind your ear. The guy goes to grab the pen, and Robert says, you know, he is scared for his life. He is freaking out. He's trying to figure out what the heck's going on. His cellie wasn't in the cell, coincidentally, at that very moment. And as soon as the guy actually goes for the pen, that's when they were both maced. Now, Robert tells me that they take them both out of the cell. Robert could barely breathe, he said, from being maced. In fact, he could barely talk, he said. Like, couldn't get words out. Meanwhile, the white individual, the attacker, is screaming still the top of his lungs, Nigger, I'm going to get you, I don't care, I'm in here for murder, just obscenities beyond. And then, well, I should say, what that shows is that guy, maybe he's superhuman, but wasn't affected at all and or not maced, and Robert was. Then Bush, they decide to take Robert to medical, as they should. Robert describes medical as 12 or 13 people / nurses standing around him while the doctor, a female doctor there at MCC, comes in. He starts explaining to her all of his ailments. And she says, I'm going to x-ray your head. Apparently they did one x-ray of his head. They told him he was fine. Meanwhile, his entire forehead, I could see, I FaceTime with Robert. His entire forehead was swollen. He had a large ball-shaped, a swollen part to the left of his left eyeball. He told me he was seeing black dots. He told me the pain in his head was excruciating to even speak or was light. And you know what they did?
What did they do?
They said, all right, we're taking you to the SHU. Now, for those of you...
please explain what the SHU is.
Yeah, so for those of us who are not familiar with the SHU, they call it that. It's solitary confinement. It's where prisoners go when they do bad things in prison and they don't know what else to do with them, but they put them there. They do not get the same luxuries or commissary or anything when they're in the SHU. It's basically a place to put for punishment. Well, Robert ends up being taken there, even though Robert says he knew the whole time that they knew what happened because everyone was talking about it as not being Robert's fault. Needless to say, they take Robert to the SHU and they put him in a solitary room with a bright light on him. It's probably the psych room, and a bed on the floor, and that was it. Meanwhile, guess where they take the Stomper? Oh, a couple of cells down from him. The entire time Robert's in the SHU, the guy is screaming about how he's going to get him, swearing, racial slurs. It was preposterous. Needless to say, Robert was in the SHU for 2 nights, and guess what they gave him to help him with his head, because he claimed he had headaches. He felt like his rib was broken. They felt it, said, nah, it's not broken, you're fine. And guess what they gave to him for his pain? This incident started around closer to 10:30 in the morning. At 10 p.m., they gave him 2 Tylenols. He had been experiencing this pain and discomfort and real unsettling feelings for, I don't know, since it happened Wednesday, and when I was speaking to him, it was Friday morning, mid-morning. It's just a shame. And now here's the kicker of the whole thing that I couldn't even believe my ears. So Robert said on Friday morning they take him out of the shoe and they allow him to go back to his cell. However, she's got a new cell. And guess whose cell they put him in?
The Stomper.
Yes! They clear the Stomper stuff out, apparently, and they have all Robert's stuff in, like, Robert described it like as his luggage, even though it's not truly luggage, in the Stomper's room, and Robert's old roommate is moved into the Stomper's room with Robert, and that's where he is. And if that isn't some mental warfare that seems to be purposely going on there, I don't know what is. So that's what really happened. It's not as if some dude got, in a little scuffle. Right. Robert is not a fighter. Robert is very, in fact, he's very a light talker, very soft-spoken, and not interested in fighting people. This left his jaw. He literally showed it to me. He said they told him it wasn't broken, but he literally could move his jaw. It looked as if it was separated from the top, far to the left and far to the right. Can't open his mouth the whole way like he used to. And obviously, for purposes of stinging, it's not a good look.
Right.
So
now being on his defense team, where do you go from here with this?
Well, he's got a bond, an appeal of his bond on Friday in the second Court of Appeals. And they're going to be arguing about why it's appropriate for him to have a bond pre-trial. And they're going to, when I say they, this is a New York federal case. So we've got lawyers there. And they are going to argue on his behalf regarding the bond, and they're going to add, obviously, an argument showing by this very fact of what we just saw went on or heard went on, that the MCC is not capable of protecting an individual who all humans deserve to be protected. And there are rules and regulations in the prisons for how individuals should be protected. And he's still a human, and all humans should be protected, obviously. The number one thing I said, Bush, when I heard all of this, when I spoke with Rob, put my lawyer hat aside. Humans should not be treated this way. The way Robert's been treated, and trust me, I have a bunch more stories that I could tell, but I've held back. I don't want anyone to treat Robert worse than he's already being treated. But when it comes down to it, regardless of his charges that are understandably making people uncomfortable, the charges, put that aside for a moment. In the times that we're in, Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement, it's all about people and remembering we're all human. Unfortunately, I think in this particular instance, humanity didn't matter. And Robert deserves to have a fair, unbiased trial just like anybody else. But under these circumstances, it's not going to happen. I'm scared for that.
Wow. I appreciate you taking the time to clear up everything that happened last week with R. Kelly and everything that we've heard that happened in the jail and what is going on, and updating us that does have a bond hearing coming up at the end of this week.
It's true. It's on Friday.
But you have to keep us updated on what's going on.
Thank you. Of course I will, because I've always said, and I've always been that person that, believes in the truth and believes in justice. And unfortunately, neither of those, in my personal beliefs, are occurring right now.
Right.
And obviously, as a lawyer, I certainly cannot talk about the facts of the case, but this goes well beyond that. This is not about the facts. It's about reality and humanity.
Gotcha.